This week on Jerusalem Dateline, world powers sit down with Iran to scale back its nuclear program. Israeli leaders doubt they'll succeed. Plus, Made in Israel, the Hollywood film that broke with convention and chose to shoot its biblical scenes in the Holy Land. And every year, millions and millions of birds stop in Israel. We'll tell you why they're flocking to the Holy Land. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. We're coming to you on a beautiful sunny day here in Jerusalem with Jerusalem's old city in the background. Once again, the international community met with Iranian officials to try to reach an agreement over the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. But many leaders, including Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu, doubt they'll be successful. The talks bring Iran together with the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. Their goal is to finalize a deal reached last November in Geneva. Under that 6-month accord, Iran agreed to cap its nuclear program in return to limited sanctions relief by the West. Here in Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a meeting of American Jewish leaders the interim deal has slowed Iran's nuclear program by only 4 weeks.
That's what Iran has given to the world, which means it's given practically nothing. But Iran has received a great deal. It's received the easing of sanctions. It's given 4 weeks. But it's receiving a new position in the world. It's being legitimized.
Netanyahu warned Iran's new centrifuges are 50 times faster than their old ones, and that Iran is developing ICBMs with one goal in mind.
By the way, the range is geared to Europe and soon to the United States. It's not for us. And there's only one purpose in the world to develop ICBMs. You develop an ICBMs in order to deliver a nuclear payload.
This is not a country that our government can trust.
Former Governor Mike Huckabee told CBN News current U.S. policy toward Iran is naive.
I'm amazed of the naivete of the Obama administration when it comes to Iran. The Iranians are laughing up their sleeves, they're dancing in the streets because they're getting everything they want. Once again, this country that is not being held accountable, not only for their actions in trying to accelerate toward nuclear weaponization, but they're virtually being rewarded for the hateful, not just anti-Semitic, but anti-human rhetoric that they have tossed to not just Israel, but to the United States.
Mike Huckabee was a former Republican presidential candidate, and he spent a few days here in Jerusalem this week. We talked with him at length about his recent experience in Auschwitz, the state of U.S. foreign policy, and why it's important to visit Israel. Governor Huckabee, thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline. You were in Auschwitz just a few weeks ago. Tell me what your impression was, how moving that was to you.
It was one of the most amazing moments because to see 64 members of the Israeli Knesset be on the grounds of Auschwitz on the 69th anniversary of the liberation of that horrible place, and to realize that they were standing in victory on the very grounds that were intended to be the absolute end of all Jews. It was an extraordinary reminder that God is not finished with Israel. I mean, if there was no other message to come from it, how else could one interpret it? Is that there's no Nazi government today. It's in the dustbin of history, but there is a Jewish government today. And out of the horrible ashes of Auschwitz now lives the prosperous, free, democratic, growing, and thriving Israel.
Unfortunately, some years later, there's still a government that wants to annihilate the Jewish people. Yeah. And in just a couple of days, there's going to be another round of talks with Iran about freezing their nuclear program. What do you think about the Obama administration's approach towards Iran's nuclear program?
And how we could possibly sit back and somehow believe them? This is the same country that murders people in their streets who vote differently than they're supposed to vote. This is not a country that our government can trust. And it's sad because there are wonderful Iranian people. There are many, many people. I say the overwhelming majority of the Iranian people are good and decent people, and they're not representative of what their government has become.
Some people would say that the two main goals of the Obama administration's foreign policy is to, one, impose a Palestinian state, and two, prevent Israel from attacking Iran. Would you say that, would you agree with that? And if so, what are the consequences for the U.S. and Israel?
Well, first of all, the idea that the creation of a Palestinian state, you know, that it's one thing to say that, okay, but where? And at what expense? Israel is our only friend, our only really mirror of freedom and democracy in all the Middle East. We should be doing everything we can to stand with Israel. And as far as the Palestinians, we should make it clear, if you want to have a peace negotiation, here's the precondition. You put in writing and announce to the world that you agree that Israel has not only a right to exist, but a right to exist with safe and secure borders. And number two, you repudiate and renounce the terrorism of the past, and you renounce and repudiate even your textbooks for children, which celebrates the death of Jews. Until then, we would encourage the Israelis to build as much and as many places as you can, and say there's nothing to negotiate as long as one party doesn't believe in the existence of the other.
Secretary of State, I think, boasted that there's 160 people in the Pentagon and the State Department talking about the security of Israel. Does that trouble you as an American?
Yes, it troubles me as an American. It troubles me that the State Department is being headed by a person who seems to have absolutely no understanding of the dynamics of what's happening here. And the inference of a boycott. Well, America ought to be doing everything it can to say to the whole world, you better not boycott Israel or we'll start buying more stuff from them, because they're our friend. You don't do this to our friend without a penalty to us. We ought to be standing with our friends, not threatening them.
Two questions. First of all, why do you bring people here to Israel? And second of all, do you have any plans to go to Iowa or New Hampshire?
You know, I've been coming to this country for 41 years. I never get tired of it, and I still love to bring people, because I feel like that there's a sense of which people in America need to understand how much there is an identity in the American mindset and psyche and in the Israeli mindset and psyche. Both countries came into being as a result of escaping the galloping terror of tyranny and authoritarianism. Both established a beachhead of freedom and democracy so their children could grow up with the freedom to worship, the freedom to choose, and to be treated as individuals. The remarkable similarities of our country, I think, demand that we have that identity. And I want to bring people here so that they go home as strong ambassadors for Israel and understand Israel and the Middle East. And as far as Iowa and New Hampshire, I've got some speeches that I'll be doing in both places, but don't read too much into it just yet.
Okay. Thank you, Governor.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
The civil war in Syria is causing the U.S. to rethink its foreign policy. That story and more news from the region in our Jerusalem Dateline News Wrap.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ephraim Graham with your Jerusalem Dateline Weekly News Wrap. A broad group of Israelis is lobbying lawmakers in Israel to declare their country a Jewish state. Even though Israel's flag features the Jewish Star of David, it's not officially a Jewish state under the law. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is demanding Palestinians recognize Israel's Jewish status as part of any peace agreement. But leading Palestinians are opposing the move. They say calling Israel a Jewish state would doom U.S. efforts to ram through a peace deal between the Palestinians and Israel. The civil war in Syria is posing a growing threat to U.S. national security, and it's forcing the Obama administration to reevaluate its strategy. Al-Qaeda-linked militants are working their way into the rebel forces and pushing out moderates. Officials say that could lead to potential terrorist bases to plot and carry out attacks against the U.S. President Obama has avoided involvement in Syria so far, but now the White House says it's examining alternative options, including drone strikes on rebel factions who might try to later attack the U.S. Palestinian girls and young women who are abused in their homes often have nowhere to turn. Recently, a girls' home for these young victims received an important gift from CBN's Operation Blessing.
Meet Samara, Maha, and Aziza. At first glance, it's hard to tell these girls came from homes where they were beaten and abused. But today, they have a safe place to live at the Bethlehem Girls' Home.
This house is the only house in all Palestine for such girls.
Diana Mubarak is the director of social affairs for the town of Bethlehem. She knows firsthand money is tight for this government-run home, and the needs are great.
We were in a very bad situation here. The building was very bad.
In the winter, this old stone building gets very cold. The girls sleep on beds covered with worn-out sheets. Some even use towels as blankets. And the cabinets where they keep their clothes are broken and full of splinters. Recently, the girls' home got a visit from Operation Blessing Israel, and we saw a chance to help. While the girls were away at school one day, our team of volunteers went to work. We gave the girls warm bedding and rugs and brand new wooden cabinets. A few hours later, the girls came home to see their new rooms.
When I walked in here, I couldn't believe it. The rooms were so dark before, and now they are shining.
The Operation Blessing, I can see that they are one of the few organizations that in a short time, they think about us and they promise us, and suddenly they show.
Thank you very, 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 very much.
And you can learn more about Operation Blessing's work in Israel. Simply go to our website, cbnnews.com. Up next, say goodbye to Hollywood while filmmakers are choosing to make more movies in the Holy Land.
Start planning your journey to the Holy Land. Come to Jerusalem. Breathe the air Jesus breathed that very night in the Garden of Gethsemane. Walk in his footsteps to Golgotha. Step inside the tomb. See the stone where his body lay. Glory to God, he is risen. Ask your pastor or visit goisrael.com to learn more about making the journey that will transform your faith in God and his word. Experience Israel. You'll never be the same.
Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. Movies about Bible stories are becoming increasingly popular these days. You may not realize it that many movies about the Bible are not made in the Holy Land. However, that trend may be changing.
Hearken, you house of Israel. Give ear, O you house of the king, for judgment is toward you. I know Ephraim, and Israel is not hid from me.
The movie Amazing Love tells the story about the prophet Hosea and his unfaithful wife, Gomer.
He speaks of prostitution while his own wife is a harlot.
It begins with a modern-day dilemma when a youth pastor, played by Sean Astin,
all right, everybody, let's get out and check around. It's gonna be your home for the next 2 nights.
Deals with a young girl consumed with herself.
Hey, Ashley, we're only gonna be here for this weekend. Do you really need all that luggage?
I couldn't decide what to wear.
While filmmakers shot this scene in California, they went to Israel for their Bible scenes. This film, Amazing Love, is being shot in the center of the modern-day city of Nazareth, and in a recreation of what Nazareth would have looked like 2,000 years ago, called Nazareth Village.
Shooting here in the village, the sets speak for themselves. Really, the facility here to be able to shoot real stones and real mud, things that are built together by hand and hewn out of rock by guys with chisels that we meet, you know, and nothing here is not authentic. Everything here was made the same way it would have been 2,000 years ago.
Kevin Downs, who starred in the movie Courageous, directed Amazing Love. When he first came to Israel, he started to dream.
As a filmmaker, my mind started to spin, and I started thinking, man, could you shoot a movie here? Could you make a story here? Because it would be so impactful.
Downs discovered the joy of making a movie in the land where Jesus walked.
And so it actually was my life's passion. So when we shot our first shot on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, it was like 6:48 a.m. I remember the time. And I sat there, and a tear came down my cheek because I felt like it was a dream come true from now, I think, 19 years or so that I've been doing this. And it's like I'm now filming a movie, you know, right where Jesus walked, right in God's holy land.
You know, the one line that just keeps coming to mind, I've heard it over and over and over, is life-changing.
Downs got help for the movie from Gary Beyer. Beyer and his wife Cindy started Writers Gathering, an organization to bring filmmakers and storytellers to Israel, what they call the cradle of creativity.
We bring them here in hopes that we feed that well from which they write, or they will decide, I'm going to bring my film here and do that. And that has actually grown to the points to where writers now are bringing their films here. And this is a place where we host them here at Place of Stories. We'll scout for them. They'll shoot either along here in the Golan North Shore, or they'll go to Nazareth, to the old restored village of Nazareth. So it's a great place to capture story.
But what about the dangers of filming in Israel?
It's strange at first when you think about shooting in Israel, because you read the news, or you think, it must be high tension there, or it'd be this crazy place you wouldn't want to come to and be dealing with all this stuff, and it's really not that. From the moment I got off the plane, I was like, what's all the, really? this is beautiful. Like, why didn't I come here on vacation,
Downs hopes to shoot another film in Israel and has a message for other filmmakers.
Every filmmaker in our space has got a Bible story in the back of their mind, and I'm going to encourage them to, pray about it and seek God's guidance to maybe bring you over here.
Coming up, a bird watcher's paradise in Israel. Tourists are flocking to it in droves. We'll show you why it's become a huge phenomenon. Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. Most of the news coming out of the Middle East deals with violence and unrest, but it's also a land of great beauty and natural wonders. Twice a year, 500 million birds migrate through Israel. That's because it lies on one of the world's major migration routes. The Hula Valley hosts millions of birds and thousands of visitors each year.
This is one of the richest sites in the world for bird watching.
Israel sort of is a junction between three continents, and birds that are essentially trying to avoid high mountains, great expanses of water, they funnel through very specific flyways.
Some of these migrating birds fly 2,000 miles in 3 to 5 days without a meal. They fly from Europe and Asia to Africa. For many, Israel is the halfway point. That point is the Hula Valley, part of a 3,700-mile stretch from Syria to Mozambique. The Bible mentions the bird migration as part of a metaphor. Even the stork in the sky knows her seasons, and the turtle dove and the swift and the thrush observe the time of their migration. Some 400 species of birds stop for refueling, and a fraction even winters here, including 30 to 45,000 cranes. Listening to them talk, one can understand why King Hezekiah said he chattered like a crane. In fact, it's not just noise. Experts say crane parents and chicks can actually recognize each other's voices. 20 years ago, there were hardly any cranes here because the natural swamps were drained for farmland. The ground didn't work for agriculture, however, so experts restored part of the lake.
And the answer was essentially to give it back to nature. And so the project has gone sort of in a circle, and we are back to trying to renovate, trying to sort of reproduce what existed here in the past.
That and a special feeding project brought the cranes back, along with the visitors.
This is a wonderful opportunity for us to educate people about birds, about nature. I think that you don't need to be a bird lover when you are coming here, but you are definitely a bird lover when you are going out of this site.
Visitors to Agamon HaHula Reserve can ride the safari wagon into the midst of the cranes. Guides say there's no place else in the world to see so many cranes in such a small area. And bird watchers come from all over to see the phenomenon.
I don't even care if you like birds. You have to experience this and come and see thousands and thousands and thousands of cranes.
If you're a birder, I don't think you could find a better place to come to see the variety of species, as well as the atmosphere and the beauty of the place is just unrivaled in any place in the world.
For now, these cranes are getting ready for the long flight back to Russia or Finland for the summer. But they'll be back next year, along with the bird lovers. Coming up, the gift of life. How Israeli doctors help restore a Muslim boy who was nearly killed by a wild animal. Finally this week, Israel's enemies may dream of destroying the Jewish state, but actually the opposite is happening inside Israel. For example, recently an Israeli hospital gave new life to a Muslim boy from Ethiopia. who was nearly eaten alive by a wild animal.
8-year-old Abdel Razak is a Muslim boy from an Ethiopian village and lives with his family in a mud hut. He was attacked by a ferocious hyena which almost ate him head first.
The father jumped on the hyena and grabbed him with his grabbed him by the back legs so he wouldn't run, and he started beating him, but he wouldn't let go with the kid. And then other people came and with sticks and knives, and then he let him go, and the hyena ran away.
Abdel Razak languished in an Ethiopian hospital for 6 months. He had no hope of recovery until a Jewish doctor found him there. Through the help of the Friends of the Western Galilee Medical Center and others, he was brought to Israel for treatment along with his father.
I can't save the world, but I will try to save small world of this child and his family.
Dr. Masad Barhoum heads the Western Galilee Medical Center in Nahariya, just 6 miles from the border with Lebanon.
Now if you see him with his father going around the hospital, everybody say hello to him, and it's lovely. What this deed do for this organization, we give.
The first time I saw him, I cried. It's horrific to see a kid like this, that an animal mutilated his face.
Dr. Ayel Sela directs the ear, nose, and throat department.
Every time we had to change the dressing, the father was crying, he was crying, the nurses was crying, I was crying, everybody were crying. You know?
Sela operated on Abdel Razak and reconstructed his ear and jaw and attended other head injuries.
Without the surgeries, I don't think he would have survived.
CBN News was there when hospital staff gave him a farewell party.
He won't be able to see in the right eye because the hyena bit him there. He's going to have a normal life. He's a kid. He's very strong. He's very strong, and he's a very happy kid.
His father said through an interpreter he was extremely happy and would tell everyone when he goes home what Israel did for him and his son.
The fact that he's Muslim, it doesn't... Here in Israel, we're all mixed together. Muslims, Christians, Jews, you know that. So we don't see religion, we don't see color, we don't see these things.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Nahariya, Israel.
That's just one of the many good news stories coming out of Israel. That's it for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time right here in Jerusalem.